97 seconds ago, Representative Dan Goldman pulled a blue folder from under his briefcase, opened it with deliberate slowness, and said 5 words that made FBI Director Kash Patel's face go completely white. "I have the Maxwell email." The actual email that Ghislaine Maxwell sent to Jeffrey Epstein on July 2, 2020, 4 days before her arrest, naming both Kash Patel and Pam Bondi explicitly. The one the FBI claimed was lost. The one that every journalist in Washington had been searching for. Goldman had it. And he was about to read it out loud in a packed House Oversight Committee hearing with every major network broadcasting live. Watch until the end, because what Goldman reveals in that email, the exact words Maxwell used, will make it impossible for either of them to deny what everyone has suspected. They didn't just know about the Epstein operation, they were part of protecting it. House Oversight Committee, Thursday morning, 11:23 a.m., supposed to be routine oversight. Kash Patel sat at the witness table, that familiar controlled confidence, the look of someone who thought this was just another hearing to survive. 5 attorneys behind him in a defensive wall. Pam Bondi sat to his right, Attorney General, projecting authority, 3 attorneys flanking her like sentries. For 90 minutes, both deflected every hard question with practiced bureaucratic language. Patel cited ongoing reviews and classification protocols with the smooth efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Everything was going as their legal teams had scripted. Both witnesses were checking their watches, ready for this to end. Then Jamie Raskin recognized Representative Dan Goldman for questioning. Every reporter in the gallery sat up straighter, pens ready. Goldman doesn't do theater. He doesn't waste time. Former assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted Russian organized crime. Lead counsel for Trump's first impeachment. He doesn't bring documents unless they're going to end careers. And he certainly doesn't bring blue folders with red classification stripes unless someone's about to have the worst day of their professional life. The blue folder sat in front of him with a single red classification stripe across the top. Goldman's expression was calm, focused, deadly. The look of a prosecutor who already has the confession before asking the first question. "Director Patel, Attorney General Bondi," Goldman began, his voice carrying that courtroom precision. "I want to ask you both about electronic communications recovered from Ghislaine Maxwell's personal devices." He paused, let the weight of those words settle. "You've both testified in previous hearings that you had no communication, direct or indirect, with anyone associated with Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise. Is that still your testimony today?" Patel responded immediately, voice steady. "That's correct, Representative. I have never communicated with Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, or any individual I knew to be connected to their criminal activities." Bondi nodded in agreement. "Same for me, Representative. I had no contact with that network whatsoever." Goldman reached for the folder. "Let me show you something then." He pulled out a single sheet, held it up so every camera could capture the FBI evidence label. "This is an email extracted from Ghislaine Maxwell's encrypted server by FBI Digital Forensics, sent from Maxwell's account to Jeffrey Epstein on July 2, 2020 at 3:47 p.m., 4 days before FBI agents arrested her in New Hampshire." The room went silent, the kind of silence that happens when something terrible is about to be exposed. Patel's left hand moved to the table edge, fingers spreading flat against the polished wood. That's his tell. Every lawyer who's watched him testify knows it. When he's about to lie, when he's calculating his next move, that hand goes flat on the table like he's trying to anchor himself to reality. The subject line reads, "KP and PB Final Insurance Protocol." Goldman looked up from the paper, eyes moving between both witnesses. KP and PB, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. "Would either of you like to explain what insurance protocol Ghislaine Maxwell was discussing with Jeffrey Epstein about both of you?" Patel's face went from normal to pale to gray in 4 seconds. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Behind him, his attorneys leaned forward simultaneously. Representative, I have no knowledge of any such email, and without seeing the full context, I cannot comment on what appears to be fabricated. It's authenticated, Goldman said flatly. He pulled out a second document. This is certification from your own FBI Digital Forensics Laboratory, dated November 8, 2024, confirming extraction from Maxwell's devices, verifying metadata timestamps. Your own lab authenticated it, Director. Your own people confirmed this is real. So I'll ask again. What insurance protocol was Maxwell discussing with Epstein about you and Attorney General Bondi? Bondi's hands gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. Representative, if such a communication exists, it has nothing to do with me. I never met either of those individuals. Then let me read what Maxwell wrote, Goldman said, voice sharp now. Quote, Jay, the situation with KP and PB has reached critical threshold. They are making inquiries that lead directly to the 2018 channels. KP contacted DOJ oversight asking about case file classifications. PB received a call from Senator Graham's office about Miami prosecution decisions. He paused, looked up. That's you asking about classifications, Director Patel? And you getting calls about Miami prosecution timeline, Attorney General Bondi. This email proves both of you were actively involved in Epstein matters in July 2020. Patel's attorney leaned forward, whispering urgently. Patel shook his head, jaw tight. Representative, inquiries about classifications are routine oversight responsibilities. Goldman continued reading, ignoring the deflection. Quote, we need to activate the comprehensive insurance immediately. I have prepared the full package as discussed, photographs from the April 2017 event, financial documentation showing the November transfers, and signed agreements from both parties. This should ensure complete cooperation and permanent silence on all related matters. The impact was immediate. Patel's face went completely white, like every drop of blood drained. His breathing became rapid, visible. Behind him, all 5 attorneys writing frantically on legal pads, passing notes with urgent expressions. Bondi sat frozen, her hands locked on the table edge, knuckles bone white now, unable to move or speak. Photographs from April 2017, Goldman repeated slowly, letting each word land. Financial documentation showing November transfers. Signed agreements from both parties. He looked between them. What event in April 2017? What transfers in November? What agreements did you sign? Neither spoke. The silence stretched out. 20 seconds, 30 seconds. In congressional hearings, 30 seconds of silence is a confession. Everyone in that room knew it. Patel finally spoke, voice barely controlled, each word forced. Representative, you are reading from a document I have not seen, cannot verify, and which appears to reference matters entirely unrelated to me despite sharing initials. Goldman pulled out a third document. This is a Secret Service log from April 22, 2017. It shows Kash Patel, then senior counsel to the House Intelligence Committee, attended a private event at a Palm Beach residence. He held up the log. The residence was owned by a trust associated with Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's primary financial patron. Patel's jaw clenched hard. That was a legitimate congressional fact-finding event related to counterintelligence matters. Were Epstein or Maxwell present at this event? I don't recall everyone at a reception 7 years ago. Let me help your memory. Goldman held up a photograph, turned it toward the cameras. This photo shows you, Director Patel, standing next to Ghislaine Maxwell, both holding champagne glasses, engaged in conversation. The photograph hit like a bomb. Reporters typing frantically, committee members leaning forward. Cameras zoomed on Patel's face, capturing every expression of shock and panic. Maxwell sent this email July 2, 2020, Goldman continued. She mentions the April 2017 event, says she has photographs. He looked at Patel. How many other photographs? How many other compromising moments? Mr. Chairman, Patel said, voice rising, I request a recess. Request denied, Chairman Comer said. Director, Representative Goldman has authenticated FBI documents. Answer his questions. Goldman wasn't finished. Let me read the rest. Quote, The insurance package includes documentation of the financial arrangements. The November 2016 transfer of $340,000 through the Cayman account to the DC LLC matches PB's timeline. The paper trail is comprehensive. If either KP or PB continues pushing for disclosure, we deploy immediately. Bondi made a sound, air forced out, her face pale, hands trembling. Attorney General, what $340,000 transfer through a Cayman account in November 2016? Bondi's voice thin. I have no knowledge of any such transfer. Goldman pulled out a FinCEN report. Wire transfer, November 18, 2016, for $340,000 from a Cayman shell company to a DC LLC registered to a law firm you used for personal legal matters in 2016 and 2017. The room erupted, shouting from the gallery, journalists jumping up, Chairman Comer banging the gavel. Bondi's attorney stood. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The Fifth Amendment. The Attorney General was taking the Fifth. The room went silent. Goldman nodded. Attorney General Bondi invoked the Fifth when asked about a $340,000 transfer that Ghislaine Maxwell documented. He looked at cameras. The Attorney General believes answering might incriminate her. He turned to Patel. Director, do you want to take the Fifth? Or explain what signed agreements Maxwell referenced? Patel sat there, hands flat, breathing rapid. Representative, without seeing the full email chain and consulting about classification issues, I cannot comment on selective excerpts. That's not an answer. Goldman gathered his documents. Let me tell this committee what we know. Ghislaine Maxwell sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein 4 days before her arrest. That email names both of you. It talks about photographs from an event where Director Patel was photographed with Maxwell. It talks about a $340,000 transfer matching Attorney General Bondi's timeline. It talks about insurance, leverage, permanent silence. He looked at both witnesses, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, both convicted sex traffickers, believed they had leverage over the current FBI director and Attorney General. They wrote it explicitly in an email the FBI authenticated. When I asked about it, one took the Fifth, the other hid behind classification. Goldman stood up. The American people deserve to know if the two most powerful law enforcement officials are compromised by blackmail from a sex trafficking network. They deserve to know if that's why the Epstein files stay buried. They deserve to know if photographs, financial records, and signed agreements are why no one else gets prosecuted. He pointed at them. Release the full Maxwell email archive. Release every communication. Prove you're not compromised. Or resign. Because if you can't deny that Epstein and Maxwell had leverage over you, you have no business running the FBI or Justice Department. The hearing continued 40 more minutes, but none of it mattered. Dan Goldman had proven with authenticated emails, forensic reports, and photographs that both Patel and Bondi were documented in Maxwell's insurance files. The files designed to ensure silence through blackmail. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. Patel's face going white, Bondi taking the Fifth, the photograph of Patel with Maxwell at the 2017 event. By noon, 3 congressional committees announced criminal referrals. The FBI Agents Association called for Patel's resignation. Legal experts were calling it the most damning testimony they'd ever witnessed. 2 minutes. 1 email from a convicted sex trafficker. Dan Goldman destroyed both of them completely. They sat at that witness table, the FBI director and attorney general, and they couldn't deny Maxwell had insurance on them. They couldn't explain the photographs. They couldn't explain the transfers. They couldn't explain the agreements. And everyone watching knew what that meant. They're protecting themselves, not justice. And the Epstein network knew it all along.